January 25, 2024, News Report 1. On January 24, Liu Jianchao, the Minister of the International Department of the CPC Central Committee, separately met with the ambassadors of Japan and India to China. Liu Jianchao first met with the newly appointed Japanese ambassador to China, Chizuru Kagami. During the meeting, Liu expressed China's willingness to strengthen exchanges with Japanese political parties and people from all walks of life, promoting the building of a new era in Sino-Japanese relations. Chizuru Kagami expressed anticipation for enhanced exchanges between China and Japan in various fields, including government, political parties, and parliaments. On the same day, Liu Jianchao also met with the Indian ambassador to China, Luo Guodong. Liu stated that China is willing to continually strengthen dialogue and exchanges with India, building trust for a conducive environment to practical cooperation. The International Department of the CPC Central Committee is primarily responsible for establishing and maintaining relations between the CPC and other political parties, not directly managing China's foreign policy. Liu Jianchao's high-profile meetings with the ambassadors of Japan and India indicate the support from the highest level and highlight the focus of future diplomatic work, including relations with Japan and India. This move aims to convey his authority and support in diplomatic affairs to the outside world. News Report 2. On January 25, credit rating agency Moody's announced a downgrade of credit ratings for 17 government financing platforms in 12 Chinese provinces, with 9 of them receiving a negative outlook. Downgraded platforms include Lini and Yantai in Shandong, Zhengzhou in Hunan, Lhasa in Tibet, Yinchuan in Ningxia, Changsha, Zhuzhou, and Changde in Hunan. Moody's cited the rising levels of local government debt and a decline in land transfer income as reasons for the downgrade. In December of the previous year, Moody's downgraded China's sovereign outlook from stable to negative, affecting the ratings of government financing platforms. Moody's predicts a weakening of local government support for these platforms, potentially impacting their repayment capacity. Overall, the situation is expected to worsen. News Report 3. Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense revealed that on January 24, 18 PLA fighter jets and 6 warships were active in the vicinity of the Taiwan Strait, with 4 fighter jets crossing the median line into Taiwan's airspace. Additionally, 3 balloons from mainland China were found in Keelung and Pingtung. China's defense minister and spokesperson Wu Qian, in a routine press conference on January 25, claimed that the PLA Eastern Theater Command conducted routine combat patrols around the Taiwan Strait. Despite PLA data showing no increase in activities around the Taiwan Strait, Wu Qian accused the U.S. of provocation, urging restraint to avoid maritime and aerial incidents. His statements indicate the PLA's adherence to traditional concepts, finding it challenging to restrict frontline forces. Pentagon spokesperson Lade, on January 24, stated that despite multiple wars worldwide, such as the Ukraine conflict, the U.S. has not shifted its focus away from the challenge posed by China. The U.S. has not redirected resources from the Indo-Pacific Command to address crises in other regions, maintaining China as its primary focus and allocating most resources to the region. This statement emphasizes the U.S.'s prioritization of the China challenge. News Report 4. On January 25, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang met with a visiting economic delegation from Japan in Beijing. The delegation, led by Chairman of the Japan Business Federation Kazuo Inamori, Chairman of the Japan-China Economic Association Takashi Fushigami, and Chairman of the Japan Chamber of Commerce and Industry Ken Kobayashi, consisted mainly of business leaders, with over 200 attendees. The delegation submitted a petition to Li Keqiang, urging China to lift the ban on Japanese seafood and enhance transparency when implementing anti-spy laws. The petition also highlighted the global division caused by U.S.-China tensions, calling for China to improve relations with the U.S. During the meeting, Li Keqiang emphasized the importance of advancing cooperation under the current crucial moment for Sino-Japanese relations. The delegation praised Li Keqiang's efforts to improve the business environment for foreign companies in China, noting his strong commitment. This meeting reflects the willingness of both China and Japan to cooperate in the economic field, while expressing hopes for an improvement in Sino-US relations. News Report 5. According to the American World Journal, United Airlines has canceled 161 round-trip flights to China in its March schedule, constituting 68% of the total. This implies a cancellation of 70% of United Airlines flights to China. The affected routes include flights from New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago, and Washington to Beijing, Shanghai, and Chengdu. Each route experienced the cancellation of 23 flights, impacting over 5,500 passengers. The only unaffected flights are from San Francisco to Chengdu and San Francisco to Beijing. United Airlines stated that the reduction in flights is a result of agreements between China and the U.S. The U.S. Department of Transportation has issued orders restricting the number of flights between China and the U.S. and providing only a certain number of time slots. Before the pandemic, there were 340 flights per week between China and the U.S. This move reflects the impact of the pandemic on the international aviation industry and the limitations on cooperation between China and the U.S. News Report 6. Xinhua News Agency reported that on January 25, the Chinese government and the Singaporean government signed an agreement in Beijing, allowing visa exemption between the two countries starting from February 9, the eve of the Chinese New Year. According to the agreement, Chinese and Singaporean citizens holding ordinary passports can enter each other's country without a visa for purposes such as tourism, family visits, and business activities, with a stay duration not exceeding 30 days. However, visas are still required for entry for work or journalistic activities. Spokesperson Wang Wenbin of the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated that the implementation of visa exemption between China and Singapore before the Spring Festival is a New Year's gift to the people of both countries. It promotes cultural exchanges and contributes to the development of Sino-Singaporean relations in various fields. After the news emerged, the search volume for Singapore on Chinese tourism platforms quickly surged, with trips' popularity for Singapore travel products increasing by 30% month-on-month. On the Qunar platform, Singapore became the fifth most popular destination for the Spring Festival, with Shanghai, Guangzhou, Beijing, Hangzhou, and Xiamen being the top departure points for travel to Singapore. However, the article points out that the benefits of visa exemption are not significant for China, as few Singaporeans choose to travel to China. Instead, it is more common for Chinese tourists to visit Singapore. Especially after the pandemic, a significant number of wealthy Chinese individuals have immigrated to Singapore. The implementation of visa exemption may exacerbate China's outflow of population and capital, especially as Singapore serves as a convenient departure point for Chinese people traveling to other Southeast Asian countries. The article also mentions that the decision-making at the leadership level may not have fully considered the potential effects of this measure. News Report 7. According to the Financial Times, securities firms such as Huaxia Fund and Bashi Fund recently received notifications from the Shanghai Stock Exchange, prohibiting them from selling overseas securities ETF products to individual investors. The Shanghai Stock Exchange has requested a halt to ETF trading related to the MSCI USA 50 Index, Nasdaq 100 Index, and Japan's Nikkei 225 Index. Ding Wenjie, a strategist at Huaxia Fund, stated that the Chinese stock market is currently at a new low in the last 5 years, while overseas stock markets have been rising. Chinese investors hope to invest in overseas markets for higher returns. Ding Wenjie pointed out that when Chinese investors want to invest in overseas markets, the China Securities Regulatory Commission tells securities firms that they cannot sell related products to individual investors. He believes that the China Securities Regulatory Commission never considers the interests of Chinese investors but pursues its own interests, aiming to cut the leak. He stated that if investors allocate funds overseas, the China Securities Regulatory Commission cannot cut the leak, so they do not allow the purchase of such products. This viewpoint expresses criticism of the China Securities Regulatory Commission's interest-oriented approach. News Report 8. Data released by research firm IDC on January 25 revealed that the shipment volume of smartphones in China last year was 270 million units, a year-on-year decrease of 5%, marking the lowest level in the past decade. The market share rankings for smartphone brands last year were as follows. Apple ranked first with a market share of 17.3%, a 2.2% YOY decrease. Honor ranked second with a market share of 16.8%, a 0.9% decrease. Vivo ranked third with a market share of 15.7%, an 8.4% decrease. Huawei ranked fourth with a market share of 13.9%, a 36% increase. Oppo ranked fifth with a market share of 13.7%, a 16% decrease. IDC believes that the Chinese economy continued to be affected by the pandemic in the first half of last year, but with an improvement in the economic environment in the second half, attention on smartphones increased, and demand began to improve, although not fully recovered. However, due to cautious attitudes of manufacturers toward shipment volumes, the market performance was not good. This indicates that, despite the gradual recovery of the Chinese smartphone market, it still faces some challenges. News Report 9. Hankyoreh reported that on January 24, a South Korean traveler with the surname Zheng was detained by customs upon arriving at Shenyang Taoxian International Airport from Seoul. Customs found that the world map on his laptop marked Taiwan as a country, leading to an hour-long detention. The report mentioned that the world map used bold fonts to indicate various countries and red fonts for capitals. Taiwan was marked with bold fonts, but the traveler did not explicitly refer to it as a country, he only used bold fonts. Similarly, Taipei was marked in red, similar to Beijing. Customs deemed this a violation of the One China principle, leading to the traveler's detention and investigation. The South Korean traveler stated that the font on the laptop's map was very small, making it difficult to read. He believed that the charges from customs were baseless. Customs eventually confiscated the map from the laptop and tore off the relevant sections. The traveler expressed confusion as, due to work-related travel between China and South Korea for over 30 years, this was the first time he had encountered such a situation. The South Korean consulate in Shenyang stated that it is investigating the situation and, if Chinese customs did indeed act improperly, will strongly request measures to prevent similar incidents in the future. This incident has raised concerns among some about freedom of speech and political sensitivity, suggesting that such actions may have characteristics reminiscent of the taboo features of the Cultural Revolution era. News Report 10. The Hong Kong Court of Final Appeal made a final ruling on the June 4 Assembly case involving the former vice-chairperson of the Hong Kong Alliance in support of Patriotic Democratic Movements of China, Chow Hang-tung. The court ruled in favor of the Department of Justice, upholding the original conviction and 15-month prison sentence for Chow Hang-tung. In 2021, she published articles on social media and newspapers related to the June 4 incident, mentioning the need to stand firm and light candles. The Department of Justice accused her of inciting others to participate in an unauthorized assembly. Chow Hang-tung had previously appealed to the High Court, which ruled in her favor, overturning the original conviction and sentencing. However, the Department of Justice brought her case to the Court of Final Appeal. Ultimately, the Court of Final Appeal ruled to uphold the original conviction and prison sentence. This incident raises concerns about freedom of speech and the right to assembly, sparking worries among some about political censorship and restrictions on freedom of speech in Hong Kong. It also highlights the controversy within the Hong Kong judicial system regarding politically sensitive cases. News Report 11. A report released by the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, on January 24 indicates that cases of child athletes using performance-enhancing drugs are mainly concentrated in countries such as China, Russia, and India. The sports involved include weightlifting, athletics, cycling, among others. WADA conducted a study called Operation Safe Sport from 2012 to 2022, finding systematic use of performance-enhancing drugs in China, Russia, and India. The report points out that children as young as 8 years old were involved in the use of performance-enhancing drugs. In China, commonly used substances for doping include clenbuterol. Russia utilizes diuretics like furosemide, while India uses synthetic metabolic steroids like confilin. Some child athletes are required by coaches to take performance-enhancing drugs to lose weight during puberty, causing profound trauma to the young athletes. The report only reveals the tip of the iceberg regarding the issue of Chinese athletes using performance-enhancing drugs, indicating systematic involvement of government agencies in promoting such behavior. This problem raises concerns about the health of child athletes and the management of sports institutions. News Report 12. According to the Korean Central News Agency, North Korea held an expanded meeting of the Political Bureau of the Workers' Party of Korea on January 23 and 24. During the meeting, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un expressed the need to explore paths for improving economic development and emphasized that the failure to provide food for the people is a serious political issue. He seemed to attribute the food problem to external factors, shifting blame to other countries, a strategy similar to many dictators who often blame others for their problems. Despite facing food shortages for many years, Kim Jong-un appears to maintain a luxurious lifestyle. Last year, North Korea implemented border restrictions to combat the COVID-19 pandemic, coupled with natural disasters such as floods and droughts, exacerbating food shortages. Many North Koreans endure hunger, with some even dying from famine. According to a report from the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, 10 million North Koreans were adversely affected and faced starvation during the pandemic in 2022. From 2019 to 2021, 40% of North Koreans suffered from malnutrition, and 20% of North Korean children experienced developmental disorders. The estimated 25% of the country's GDP spent on military expenditures by the North Korean government contrasts sharply with the food shortages faced by its people. This situation bears similarities to China, where substantial funds are allocated to the military, leaving many ordinary citizens struggling with healthcare issues. Once again, it highlights the detrimental effects of authoritarian rule on the people, with North Korea and China sharing similarities in this regard.